Hello, my friends, and today I'll be brush painting and building this East German T-55 tank from Lindberg. This box is pretty large, so sorry for the slight shakiness. And it seems like you can even build a Tehran 5, an Israeli T-55 tank. And the parts are literally only 7 sprues and just with 8 steps. I believe this kit is something in between the era of a 60s or 70s kit. I'm not quite for certain, but you can definitely look at the age of this vehicle with some of the parts and the plastic being relatively thick. And although not perfect in fitting, it still sort of holds up in today's standards. Since 1/35 scale has such large parts and sprues, I have to use Tamiya's, not extra thin, but pretty much thick glue to help bond together these large plastic parts so that they won't break off and that this drying time is much slower than usual. And even parts that are already glued with this Tamiya thick glue, I can even extra securely bond it with Tester's extra thin cement. We can finally attach the final part of the model. For priming the model, I use Tamiya's fine surface primer in light gray. Now we can begin brush painting the model by using XF61 dark green, and all I do to thin it down with is just plain water. Now I can start with some color modulation by using yellow, green, and sky to help make the model look more interesting and to add more vibrant colors to my liking. Here I want to show you how I used the overbrushing technique, where you have the brush slightly moistened with water and you have still a little bit amount of paint left on the brush, so that you can overbrush and sort of blend in the paint color onto areas that you want to be different shades of color that are either lighter or even darker. This old kit came with a nice selection of decals, especially for the Israeli tank, but I want to do an East German tank of the T-55, mainly on the Berlin Wall area, in East Berlin, obviously. I apologize for those that may have wanted me to do this T-55 tank in Soviet markings, but you may be able to expect some future tanks on some Russian models in my future videos. To help seal in this paint, I use Tamiya's spray can TS13 Clear, so I can get a nice glossy sheen, which will be toned down by later effects of chipping and weathering. And of course, some of you may know me that I only use acrylics for my models, because I hate the smells of, the thinners that are used in enamels and oils. Here you can see me mixing dark green with sky gray to get nice light chipping effects on the model, and I even add some wooden deck tan to even push the effect even stronger, as well as a few drops of paint retarder so that the Tamiya paint doesn't dry so fast on me. I then apply this chipping effect with this sponge chipping technique by removing excess paint from the sponge onto a piece of paper or a paper towel, and it'll give me nice little specks of paint chipping. I also mixed NATO black and brown, also with a hint of red, to get a nice chipping oxidation look onto the model, as you will also see me apply some relatively subtle rust effects on the T-55 so that the chipping effects will look even more interesting. Now I can begin applying the rust effects by mixing the same dark brown chipping color with a little bit more red so that you can really see these chipping effects pop out and have a nice subtle light rust effect. I use wooden deck tan to paint the cover for the gun, and also mixed in later on with a brown wash to help accentuate some of the details. And here you see me using a rusty brown wash to help give a little bit more interest and weathering effects onto the shovel and spare tracks. Now for the dusty wash of using XF57 buff from Tamiya, so I get a nice idea of where I want to build up some later on weathering light dust effects for areas that have been built up over time on the tank. I apply this heavy dust wash onto areas where I think dust will have accumulated and built up over time by the tank's usage. And if you may know my technique of mixing soap with the Tamiya paints, the soap allows me to later on remove it, or almost sometimes blend it into areas to I would want to leave as if you were working with oils or with enamels. We can finally begin removing the excess paint and leaving it into deep crevices and corners of leaving it into a nice dusty color look of what I was going for, and also for my future weathering. And I just use a dampened cotton bud with water. Here you can see me using the same method as the dusty wash of making a dark brown color out of flat brown and needle black, and it helps also give a nice color variation as if maybe streaks of dirt may have been built up on the tank's turret. Here I use the smoke paint from Tamiya to help paint in the clear lenses and glass parts on the tank model. I also use the clear red from Tamiya to help paint in the red light, which I believe is to be on the rear back head of the turret. To create a nice lighter earth tone color, I mix flat earth and sky gray along with deck tan to get a nice, really cool matte effect on the glossy sheen onto the tank, which is why I chose the glossy effect, which it will contrast nicely between the matte tones and the shiny tones as if the sun was reflecting off of the tank. And here you see me apply it in the same previous way that I applied the dust wash onto areas where dirt will have accumulated over time. Surprisingly, these old rubber tracks from Lindberg are very nice, and I had no issues of fitting these on. As you can see me using Loctite super glue to help glue together the rubber tracks, as I literally just applied them on as they were onto the suspension and super glued the inner road wheels so that it'll create a nice saggy look effect. The rubber tracks on weathering, I use the lighter earth tone and the light dust wash to help give some nice color variation on the rubber tracks, as well as using a just pencil or even a artist pencil to help highlight the metal tracks as if they would when they would come onto contact on the ground. I'd like to thank you for watching if you made it all the way through the video, and I'll see you next time.
Es schreien die NATO-Minister, hört ihr es nicht? Ihr Schreien ist nicht mehr Geflüster. Hört ihr es nicht? Sie schreien nach Profit ihrer Kriegsindustrie und rüsten zum Kreuzzug erneut wie noch nie. Ihr Heer steht bereit für die Aggression gegen dich und die Sowjetunion.
Arbeiter, Bauern, fester die Waffen, euch ist es heilige Pflicht, dass sie die Verbrechen beginnen, das Volk ihre Waffen zerbricht. Heute ist der Sozialismus Weltmacht, heute stehen die Völker